This QI, this AI is in big time resistant mode. It took me about 30 seconds just to be able to get over to this window. It's like locking. When you're in a monopole, we have certain abilities, right? And I noticed over the last couple of weeks, I shut the power off to the house, knocked out their 5G. It went off, and then locking up this phone is really easy for me to be able to do, which just goes into major resistant mode. You know, it's just like, don't even try it a lot. In other words, it's impossible for this QI on this planet to experience that much energy. Okay. I mentioned this before. I'm only using a fraction of what I am. All right. And we fry this place. That's the truth of it. So that's why this morning I said, hey, guess what? I'm going to put, I know how to make a map. Yes, I do know how to make a map. Of course, I know how to map a planet. Psst. It's easy. Okay. Fuck. We were making maps a long time ago. Remember a video I did one time, mapping the universe? I'm a monopole Arcturian, okay? So I've been around a little while. I think maps was one of my first favorite subjects. Cartography. Yeah, you want to make a map? Hey, I've already been here. I Star Trek through this place long before anybody ever got here. Wow, what did you find, Bones? Remember Scotty the engineer? What did you find? What did you find? Built-in explorers, baby, and we got a compass. We know how to use a compass, which is a magnet. So we know how to get around without banging into anything. You think? So I did some major releases here on the Big Island because a monopole feels everything. So one of the things that I do, because it's easier for me to do, because when I'm not using the mental field per se, but when I go deep into my heart and I just really begin to feel, this phone will lock up. Okay, the camera will shut right off. It just doesn't have the capacity to experience that, because it doesn't experience that kind of energy. It's not the energy that it likes. Okay, it's not what it is. It's not. They're not. It's not what we are. You know, it's just. It's certainly compression. Okay. But it's an enormous amount of expansion when you realize how much light and energy is actually out there. That is, if you think of it as a formation of consciousness that is in tune with the music, which is what love is, which is what light is, it goes on forever. And all the spirits that are dancing along those waves that love to dance with those waves in spirit to that music, and they all come on board. Say, we're all with you. We're all with the law of one because we love the music. And so you have musical spirits that are all coming together on behalf of the one. That's an enormous amount of energy. That's how a mathematical musician in spirit will describe it and explain it to all the other musicians, the real musicians. Okay? First creation, first musician, first sound. That's why I came out of my mama's womb with a drum set. They sent me to the wrong class. No, just give me a drum. My first set of drums was bongos. But we can find anything to make sound with, right? Particularly in nature. I never made it over to Africa. I wanted to go to the Watusis and get me one of their badass drums. A real one. Not a fabricated one and synthetic and all that stuff. No, it's gotta come from Mama. Okay, her stuff. There's got to be some goddess energy we're singing and dance to, right? Beating a drum, playing music with her, bring the spirit out. Hell yeah, we know how to bring the spirit out, all right, don't we? Big ass bonfires. Born a fire. Get the volcanoes going. Get all the volcanoes going. Bring out the fires. Bring out all the spirit. I know. So I was prepping myself because earlier, when I go into my heart, when I share things with my clan mother, she knows that I'm communicating to her the truth. Because I communicate through my heart and my soul. I don't use my brain, as they talk about the brain, because I've had to rewire the circuits and fix them many times as a result of what they do with their technology. That's why when I was a 4-year-old child, I realized my soul was running this compass, this pole, right? Okay, so my soul is operating the pole, right, with my spirit that is an enormous amount of fire, which is like eternal fire, which means, man, relight it, get that candle going. Because as I mentioned to her, when I worked at Rockwell International Corporation, I've mentioned this in a previous video of the story. I'm not going to go into it again, simply to say I got hit with a double whammy, which essentially is that when you inform somebody and you're getting paid in the way that money is defined by them, against purchasing power, which back and then, and this isn't a coincidence, it was a 300-to-1 ratio in the other direction. Okay, and the way I was able to measure that energetically, which you can actually measure by the rate of violence, or if you will, people can't be trusted anymore. Right? So people will tell you this who lived back in the 30s and 40s, not just across the backwoods, say in the South, actually anywhere in America. If you want to just use America as a model, it can be graphed, right? Quantum mapped, you know, the graph, the lines, the log scale of actually the fire, the same way that you would map a fire. You can see the burn rates on it, right? Burn rate, we used to call it skid marks. But we had a different way to describe a skid mark, was when you wipe your butt, that's called a skid mark. If you left it in your drawers, which meant you left a skid mark, which means you didn't clean yourself up, right? So one of the first things my mother told me when I was older, she said, you could not stand to be in your poop. You potty trained yourself before you were 6 months, years of age. So I realized that operating at this particular density, just the idea that I had to get rid of my waste in the way in which we do in these at this density, I was never comfortable with right out of the gate, let alone the language that you got to learn and then write it into memory and then use it to communicate in the future, you know, why you're here and what you're doing while you're here. That's why I love Alex Collier. I love you too. I love you too, Alex. I love you too. Alex was one of the first ones I remember I listened to when he talked about contact with the Andromedas, because so much of what he communicated, I'm familiar with. I'm very much like that. And he mentioned one of his mentors about experiential learning, because I'm both a learner and a student. Excuse me, a learner and a teacher. It's like being one and the same, because you're learning through all the others, or through all of your experiences, all the different experiences that you're having from which you're learning, because you're getting the feedback. So how fast are you getting the feedback? And the faster the feedback, the smarter you're getting. To do what? Run a polished mirror. That's a bright mirror. So that means you've learned how to run what we call a hot mirror. Right? Which means, man, there isn't anything sticking on that. There isn't any glucose on that. So in childhood French, using what they used to call French language, excuse my French, like fucking A, man, that's like Hell's Kitchen. See? That's why when you used to say their logos, Hell's Angels, they can't handle that much fire. That's the point. They're not willing to be burned at the stake on behalf of a goddess, to never be separated from the flower, ever. Okay. No. Foresight. I'm a tough guy. See, I'm a tough guy. Boom, duke it out. Right? You know why they do that, don't you? They didn't want to hear what I had to say to them when I was a child growing up, but they want to kill me. They're in a state of fear. So what they got to do is devalue others and toward elevate their own ego, one. And number two is they're actually in fear. And because they don't want you to actually realize how weak in power they actually are. Because if you actually knew the truth and exposed it to them, they'd want to kill themselves in their own mirror, which is the way it gets perceived, which means killing me. But it's their mirror, not mine. But we certainly know how to expose it in order to get that kind of reaction state out of them, don't we? That's right. Because fear is a lie, and that's the one they live in. And that's why they're inverted. That's the truth of it. That's why in their mind and their consciousness, with machines and weapons and all the rest of it, right? They don't want to do the work. It's much easier to use the knowledge that we've gained by cutting deals with others like Ike, right? Now look what we get. Oh, look at these little toys and these little tricks. Oh, we get to have this and we get to have that. And that becomes a sellout of power, which means they have no honor because now they can't be trusted. Because you realize when you're living in a state of eternal love, which means we do no harm, and eternal peace, it means I don't worry about what's going to happen next because you're an eternal being. Okay? That means you implicitly trust your soul and your spirit from whence you came. So you already know the company that you're with in spirit and in energy, which means we protect each other because we're family. So we see all creation as relatives or family of the same one creation. And why I cried so deeply for the entire time I was here, from the time I was for everyone. Right down to the cellular level. Which means it's not just bipeds or bipedals, but everything in nature. Because they experience what we experience, which means the entire planetary terrain. Because we're connected to all of it. So we feel all of it. That's what makes us hypersensitive. It's because we're feeling what you're feeling. Because it began with us. So I was sort of going back and forth on whether I even was capable of even sharing energetically, I guess, or releasing a lot of what I processed because of what I was feeling this afternoon. That's related to not just trauma and how deep that goes when you try and enumerate something like that to begin with. When you realize the galactic universal history of this particular universe, its record. Okay? And one of the reasons why I love Terence McKenna so much is not just the aspect that he learned through taking a shamanic journey, if you will, the relationship that he had with the great living oversoul spirit of Mother Earth, but what he learned through the Amazonian Indians, the Amazon basin, what he learned through studying all the things that he studied, from the relationship with art, the morphogenetic field structure, biology and mathematics, right? And really what he focused so much of his energy on communicating to us what he learned through psychedelics. Because I took a lot of that when I was a young, there is no age for me, okay? But when I was like in ninth grade in high school. So I was 14 or 15 years of age. And so that's not a coincidence. So I realized that the importance of the value, because that's what it is, the experience. What did you learn from the experience ultimately, right? And so when I perceive things as mirrors or magnets, as energy, if you will, and naturally it's going to be the artistic expression that we all have, which is like, blow my mind on how creative you are as an artist, which means you're on fire with the amount of love that you have and which to do it with, right? See, so you naturally love all the sounds and the music and the stories and everything that's related to how creative that actually is, because when you realize how intelligent you actually are, which is by virtue of how creative you actually are, because your creative power is on fire. When your creative fire is on power, it's like you can do anything with what you already got and change it, or come up with something that hasn't been thought of before. And the reason that you know that's an original is because of the speed at which the differences between all the things that are different from each other can be either added, exchanged, made new, or there's going to be some difference that is in it that you know has your signature on it. And because you realize how different that you are, and you're able to measure that by measuring the differences in all the others. With who you are, with what I've learned to become what I am at any one moment of now time. Because there's always another moment, which means there's always another circuit that's opening and closing through all the circuits that we're connected to, in which we're experiencing being with each other. Experiencing being here with each other together, from which we're learning through each other. The direction that we're all going in together. Within the universe or multiverse, or what I call the all creation. The direction that we all are choosing of our own free will to go in. So I knew as a child, if you take any spiritual pathway, in spirit, because there is a spirit in you and there's a spirit in me with a soul, and so the spirit is guiding you on the direction, because the spirit is the teacher with other spirits that are within that light. So all the spirits that are in that light are communicating with each other in that light, moving throughout that light field. Right? So I get communications from all the spirits. All the spirits. Unclean or otherwise. Right? And there are some unclean spirits around here. Okay? They're all over this island, which is one of the reasons why I mentioned to him the other day, this is where it ends. Like I mentioned my clan mother, how would you like to set off Mauna Kea? This was as I was on my way over here. And guess what happened? Mauna Loa went off, didn't it? It's almost like you already have a built-in compass or a looking glass. But it's not like they don't know how to do things themselves using the technology that they do. With why they do what they do with their consciousness. Sadly, and it's actually very painful, the way that their mind operates, because it's easy to observe by virtue of the observation, which is what you're experiencing in your mirror, which is the teacher. That's the feedback of what it's like to have a relationship with something like that. So what is it doing with its energy? Well, we're experiencing what it's doing with its energy. And the painful part about that is when you realize that what I do to others, I do to myself, you realize that this is what they're doing to themselves by virtue of what they do to us. So you already know what happens to them. So they already know they live on borrowed time. So when a consciousness is living on borrowed time, it's like a rat that's cornered and it's going to look for every which way it can to maintain what it's aware of in energy, in whatever means it's possible in which to do that. Enter technology. Technology transfer and alien artificial intelligence technology. So that they believe, because in their own mind that's the way that a psychomental pathway operates with artificial intelligence, right? That in order to maintain what it's aware of, it needs a source of energy since it's finite. So if you're eternity, you're always going to be a source of energy, because it means it doesn't exist without eternity. So it thinks, therefore, it now has a license, which is what they call do as thou wilt. Because what's the worst that can ever happen to them? Return to fire. From whence we began. So they're seeking to burn themselves up by virtue of what they do to others. So if that's their free will to do that, their choice gets granted, doesn't it? See, I remember I listened to what Patty had to say several years ago when she said, we're on timeline 0. I'm always on timeline 0. The pole's in the ground, baby. I'm with you. We're always together. Just like I said this gentleman yesterday, and he shook his head. He went like this with his little hoodie on. Males know. You came out of your mother. Are you going to let somebody come in there and kill your mother? You going to go in there and let her kill off her planet? Would you allow that to happen to your mother? Right? So if you love your mother, and you really love your mother because you experience love in your heart by the love that your mother gave you, then it seems reasonable, doesn't it, or natural, that the very portal that you came in here by, for which, as a grown male, you wouldn't be standing on your 2 feet without a female, and you're not willing to use your energy in order to protect her and her children, you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that fact that she was doing that. So that's the mother and father and me joined as one has to say about that. So he acknowledges that. Enter the technology. So essentially what they did is, well, this is sort of an inverted way of saying it. Because I grew up around so many alpha males. You know, I was in a military academy when I'm 5 years of age. And now we get into all the programming of programming males, because they know how to do that. Okay. In other words, what these males will naturally gravitate to by virtue of the force side. Like when you see a Navy pilot, he's getting ready to be catapulted. Hey, thumbs up, brother. That's penis to penis. The penis. The penis head. Right? My father was a commander in the United States Navy, okay? So there's a reason why I chose that family. I chose my mother and my father to come in for obvious reasons in 1951. So it does tie in directly what Alex Collier was saying. And some other folks have said, which were different waves, okay, that came in because it's much like I've echoed, because I know this, because I look for certain words that others, no matter who they are, all I have to do is just hear what they have to say. In other words, I'm aware of what I'm aware of, and I know what the truth is. And the truth that I hold on to that never has changed is actually a very small, what I call things that you know in your heart and soul, what you feel deeply, that you know is the absolute universal truth. And when you get down to knowing what the absolute universal truth is, when you get down to creation itself, okay, it actually doesn't take very long in order to stand on just a few principles or few ways in which to describe it using the English language that you could say in less than probably 3 sentences. And that's all you, in my mind, is required in order to stand on forever with those laws or those principles. And so it's always going to start with what love is, because that's what I am. So if somebody asks me what I am what love is, and living spirit that goes on forever, gifting electrons, gifting love energy everywhere that I go with my soul, in my pole, wherever I go. That's the energy that I naturally bring in. So you can understand why, as a child, if I'm trying to love you, why are you trying to hurt me? All right? Because that doesn't make any sense, does it? See, that's a lie, and that's what makes it an illusion. So now you got to know the difference between what's real and what's not real. Okay? So if you're not experiencing what love is in somebody else, but you're experiencing something different, then why is that? That means you're experiencing something different in them because you're experiencing the different in vibration, because you're experiencing what love is and they're not. So if you know that it started with what love is, and you're not experiencing love in them, then you know that something happened to them. Or they don't have the ability, like they're a bot, a machine. right? Running on artificial light, which means they're not experiencing the real McCoy, a true love vibration of living light energy with a soul, in which they're experiencing that love in them because they can translate the vibration, the frequency from which that communication is now being translated and experienced in them because they have the data. In other words, like in Terminator, this is a Homo sapien sapien, or this is an Arcturian, AB plus bloodline. This is a monopole. Whoops. Pure love energy, as pure as it gets. And he's able to translate that because just like Data on Star Trek, the information represented by the amount of energy that is represented by what I am, which is what love is that goes on forever, is what would be translated. Right? Because it's not like the knowledge is not there or accessible by them. Because it is, so they know. So that's what they were mapping and tracking. Right? So they knew they were in a race against time. Because they live on time clocks. That's how you know the difference in a time matrix with a timekeeper is the feedback ratio differential, which is a torque speed differential between eternal light and then experiencing something that's running at a slower rate of speed. Because our clocks are zeroed out. A monopole, single pole, zeroed out. There isn't any time. There's only what love is. That's a forever being. Go ask Michelle. She has a powerful magnet. So you can't fool the light because the light's going to read everything. It maps everything right down to the last frequency of how much resistance is here. Because anything that's running on a time clock will detect it. So you understand when I'm a 4-year-old little boy, I'm always at home, which means I never left home. I've never left eternity. So now there's all the other experiences for which become the stories that we tell, right? So I've described this, if you're going to graph this, right, it would be like an EKG strip, you know, when they're checking out your heart arrhythmias, right? I'm going like this. EKG strip, hey, read that strip, right? So it was like your strip, your Mobius strip. Hey, this is a strip, you know, play this movie, right? Hey, let's watch Mr. Sweetman's movie. Let's see what he experienced. Pull it up. Wow, there's too many gaps in here. Gaps. Yeah, it's like he's here, it's recorded, back again. Man, we don't have the full record on that. No, we couldn't get it recorded. Wow, logged in, logged out, gone. Wow. Wow. How'd that soul do that? How'd that spirit do that? Now you see it, now you don't. How much time went by? The way they measure it here, or the way they measure it other places? That's the benefit of being a monopole. Now they see us, now they don't. Now they see us, now they don't. Now they see us, now they don't. Fail safe. You have to know that there has to be some way that the all creation, the universe of all creation, the multiverse of all creation, the start of the hottest fire, has to have a way to protect the one, which means the all creation, which is everything we give love to that goes on forever. It's like, you know what a relief valve is, right? A pressure relief valve. Pressure relief valve. A timeout zone. I'm going to take a timeout over here. Yeah, I'm back in the game again. Where were you? No, but it's so. I was going to share because it's the deepest of all subjects that I know. Obviously, when you're in the healing business and the healing arts, it really is an art because it's an art in communication, which is an art in energy communication, particularly when you're hypersensitive. Because I certainly don't want to say anything or share anything that I've ever experienced that's going to lower anybody's frequency or vibration, particularly if it triggers any resistance that's being held in your cellular memories that still has yet to be cleared in your circuits as a result of having just been here. No matter when you were born, chances are you experienced trauma by reading a local newspaper. Okay? Or simply becoming aware of somebody that got hurt and is now suffering on some level. Right? So that's trauma. That's trauma for me. That's why it made it very challenging from the time I was a small child and I realized I was so hypersensitive that a loss of energy in anything, and it doesn't make any difference what it is, causes me to cry. Because everything that's alive and living in nature, which represents, for me, what eternal love is, means that anywhere that I am and I'm experiencing loss of voltage to something else as a result of trauma that they've experienced, whether it's a car wreck or somebody hunting down a bird, it's just, I've had some extremely traumatic experiences. It's one of the reasons why when I had a double whammy hit on me at both Rockwell International, trying to prevent, by going after the president of Rockwell International. I'm not really going after him. I'm simply trying to inform this guy. If I'm an employee and you're employing me to sort of look out for the place on your behalf, that's why you're paying me money as a fire protection officer, right? Then I'm going to bring to your attention that your business is committing a major liability because there's going to be accountability for what you do with your energy. So if you're allowing 15,000 gallons of ethyl bad stuff that ends up in the drinking water down here, and that can be attributed back to you by the fact that I'm now making you aware of this crime that's taking place on this property here at Rockwell International, and you're the president, and the buck stops with you, buddy boy. Right? So I went right to the president of Rockwell International Space Transportation System and said, listen, I'm putting it on your desk. You live in honor. You live to the highest code of honor, which is what love is. Do you care about life at all? Or you care more about money and power with a corporation? This was a space shuttle project. Same outfit. These people they're all in cahoots with each other. Corporate types are corporate types. That's called a stereotype of consciousness. Does what it does. Doesn't know any better. It's learning. It just hasn't learned. That's what it is. Its learning has not been accelerated. So now you see the difference between the cyber culture, cybernetic security command, and all that stuff, right? Happy trails to you until we meet again. So you know that you could never trust them folks, no matter what uniform they showed up in, whether it was the blue coats, in the 1850s, running across the plains with the Indians, right? With my native brothers and sisters, right? And they don't even honor their own word. So you realize they can't be trusted because they're always carrying a gun. It's one of the reasons why I love Leigh so much, who was a Lemurian. She was A+. And you say, can you come to the table without a gun? Can you come to the table? You want to sit down and have a discussion? Can you come with a flower in your hair? No, they're always packing. They live in fear. They always need a weapon. That's why putting flowers in the gun barrels of National Guardsmen, see? Now, see, in their mind, and this is their perception of power, because I remember when Max Spears talked about this, when he said, oh, they love androgynous beings. They're easy to control because they're so peaceful, they're so loving, they're so kind, they're so nurturing, they're so caring, they're so empathic. Or we can take